Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Chris and Andre Show.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Chris and Andre Show. As always, we are your loyal hosts. My name is Chris.
And I'm Andre. Thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we do. For those of you that are here for the first time, make sure that you subscribe to our channel, like this video, smash that, I don't know, ring the bell so you get notifications, right? Ding, ding, ding. Today, we're going to talk about one of our favorite topics, politics. It might not be one of yours, but it is one of ours. If you're here, it might be one of yours, for all I know. Maybe you're, masochist like that. And you just subject yourself to stuff you don't enjoy. I highly doubt that, though, based on our YouTube likes and watches and all that fun stuff, along with our podcast. We do appreciate everybody that is checking out our content, as always. But yeah, so Andre had a few things that he wanted to talk about this week, talking about him like he's not sitting directly in front of me.
Yeah, I'm right here. Yeah. So it's one of those things where you can have political conversations, and when I'm talking to like my friends or family, I'll notice there's a trend, and we've mentioned this before. There's people ease back into their talking points, and I just kind of realized something. I think I'm emotionally and mentally done with it. It's like not something I want to do anymore. Like I've never shied away from political conversations, but I typically I accept people for what they are. And some of the things we're going to talk about are going to kind of tie that picture up. The first thing that just struck my eye this week was just political ads. And man, they're just absurd. Like I've never seen such a far stretch from the truth so many times in so many different ways, and it's just annoying. Anyone I see, they're just like, just can't talk about facts and potential policies except for Mr. Wiley Nickel, who's got a commercial with his daughter in a bounce house.
This is my dad, Wiley Nickel. He says Congress is just like this bounce house. It just doesn't work if people are too far on the left or too far on the right.
Adeline is right, and that's why I'll stand up to the extremes in both parties to get things done, like increasing funding for police and cutting taxes for the middle class, while lowering healthcare and prescription costs. I'm Wiley Nickel, and I approve this message because we're better off working together.
I'm like, nice. All right. So, but every other one I've seen are just horrendous. So I just think they're absurd.
This conversation, like all conversations, reminds me of a pop culture reference, Parks and Recreation. When Leslie is running for councilwoman and there's a debate going on within her campaign because they're going to do a campaign ad, whether it should be a negative attack ad against Bobby Newport Jr., played by Paul Rudd.
Bobby Newport's been handed everything on a silver platter. His cushy job at his dad's candy company, handed to him. His 60-foot boat, Bobby's boat, handed to him.
Or it should be a positive ad promoting Leslie and like her policies and stances and stuff like that.
I'm pro Pawnee. Here are some other things that I'm pro.
And so the campaign basically splits in half, and they go off and make each ad, and then they vote on which one they like best. And everybody essentially chooses the negative one, in part because Leslie's ad doesn't mention her name, what she's running for, or anything like that. In the end, what they end up settling on is a video that she made when she was like 12 or 13 years old or something like that, where she's talking about how one day she's going to be councilwoman or, wants to be a political person and stuff like that. To which Bobby Newport replies like, "Hey, the little girl in that ad, do you think she'd do one for me?"
Yeah, I remember that episode. I just I don't. Am I crazy for thinking that, or is it just like
No, I mean, you're certainly not crazy. Like, I have been absolutely inundated with political ads, both video, right? I don't have cable, so I'm not watching anything on there, but YouTube is filled with it. And then billboards are the other place that I've seen a lot lately, because they've started putting up a ton of those digital billboards here in Wilmington and throughout New Hanover County. And so every time that I drive up to Wilmington and I'm coming back, I see the same thing. I did notice something funny the other day, that the New Hanover County Republican Committee or whatever, their party, is using the exact same template for all of their political like billboard ads, where it's a like school photo style, like a portrait photo of the candidate, their name in red cursive, their first name in red cursive, their last name in blue, like all caps, and then like what they're running for underneath it with a white background. And it's every single one is exactly the same, and matches a lot of like the yard signs and stuff like that you see as well, which is another thing that we'll get to in a little bit, because those have been driving me absolutely crazy. But when we brought this up, one of the things that one of the first things that kind of came to mind was like, how effective are these political ads, right? Whether it's positive or negative, but I was mostly interested in like, how effective are these negative ads that campaigns run against their opponents? Because I'm with you, like, I'd much rather see a campaign ad that's like, hey, here's who I am, here's what I'm running for, here's what I want to accomplish while I'm in office, right? Like, 3 points, get it done. I don't need you to tell me, Marsha Morgan, that Michael Lee is too extreme for North Carolina.
what does that even mean?
Well, they're trying to lump him in with the absolute abortion ban, along with like Ted Budd and some of the other Republican candidates.
No, I get that, but what does that actually mean? Right? It's so broad.
Yeah,
it's so broad a statement where it doesn't make any sense. You know?
They're also blaming him for all of the traffic that we're experiencing here in Wilmington, which is horrendous at times. I'm not going to lie. And I do, like in reading some of the articles and things like that have kind of been published about it, because there was a specific ad that, and I know I'm like focusing very narrowly on this very local election for NC State Senate here in the New Hanover County, but I thought it was interesting because Michael Lee filed a civil lawsuit asking a judge to require Marsha Morgan, his opponent's campaign, to remove the attack ad because it was false and all this stuff. The judge ultimately decided they weren't going to do anything, but Marsha Morgan's campaign did stop running the ad. So, I mean, like, resolution was found, but it was basically accusing him of leveraging his position because he is the incumbent, I think, or has been a state senator in the past, of leveraging that position to enhance his law firm, which represents a lot of real estate developments and stuff like that. And that's part of how they're tying him in with like traffic, is that he's just like rubber stamping all of these new developments without taking into consideration how it's going to impact traffic and the residents that already live here and stuff like that.
That's your city council, also your county commissioners. There's a lot of other.
Yeah, that's not just your state senator.
Right.
I totally agree.
That's yeah. Oh.
So the other thing that I thought was kind of interesting about this was that there was an article on WRAL. I think it was from a couple of years ago or last year, maybe it was from this year. Let me check. Where it was basically talking about. Oh, it is from this year. It was posted in April, but updated recently. That political ads are both allowed to and often designed to mislead you. That essentially political free speech or political speech does not have to meet the same requirements as, like, say, a business selling a product, right? And the example they gave was that if Coke came out with a new product that was called Coke Eternal, they couldn't claim that it would make you live forever because that's false advertising. That's, would be governed by the Federal Trade Commission or something like
Sure.
that, I think.
Sure.
The FDA might want to look into that too. But
even God, so
yeah,
God might be like,
he might have something to say about that. But that, for whatever reason, political speech is not viewed the same way, which I think is really interesting. I guess I'm concerned about that in a lot of ways because sure, if Coke produced a product that they called Coke Eternal and told me it would live forever, I'd be like, yeah, okay, whatever. And I guess I do the same with a lot of political stuff, but it just seems like the potential to do more damage exists on the political side of things.
So that probably contributes to the feeling of the divisiveness and the how far people are on their political spectrums, because I think a lot of people believe these commercials and they reinforce their talking points. I looked at Ted Budd and Sherry Beasley's YouTube because I was trying to find some just ads on YouTube. Like, do you guys really, you're advertising here, but what if I wanted to watch it again? So I'm looking on YouTube. They actually have channels. They have 29 subscribers or 29 videos or something like that, and low subscriber counts. And then I'm thinking, who subscribes to a Sherry Beasley or a Ted Budd YouTube channel?
Bots.
Yeah, bots. They have more subscribers than we do, so maybe I was a little bit envious. But
sad face
on YouTube. But I just really kind of, I don't know what purpose they serve. I don't know what purpose it serves to go so far to an extreme. It's a turnoff for me. It just makes me, you know what it reminds me of? The feeling I got when I saw John McCain quiet that lady down who was calling President Barack Obama a terrorist or whatever.
Secret Muslim.
There is no honor publicly by politicians, just hands down. So they'll run whatever type of ad, and their character is not displayed. And if that's a representation of their character, I don't want to vote for you. I really, I know that's not a popular thing to say, but you signed off on that. You signed off on this pretty outlandish thing to say about somebody else. And what I find also ironic is that you'll hear a lot of times two opposing, a Democrat and a Republican that are obviously on different sides of the aisle say, no, Chris and I have lunch every day. We're friends.
Until they're running against each other.
Yeah, it's just that's insane. It's just it's insane. It serves no purpose. But yeah, just the absurdity of these advertisements. I just don't get it. I just don't get it.
Well, and I think that leads to one of the other things that you wanted to talk about, which is, basically the idea that the ability for us to have reasonable discussions or have discussions like reasonable people has sailed, and we are not on board it very clearly. And I think that, to your point, people are willing to believe the things that they're being told from a source that they feel they can trust, right? So whether it's people, looking at a Fox News or people looking at an MSNBC or even a CNN, OAN, whatever, all these other ridiculous extreme networks that exist now, that people look at that and because for them, it's it's comforting, I'm hearing things that I want to believe. And now that's being confirmed to me. And so as long as you're getting that, then the other stuff that they feed you becomes more palatable, right? It's if somebody becomes your friend first before they start, narcissists, right? I think are very, they kind of worm their way in at first, and then they start gaslighting people, and then they start everything becomes about them and controlling the conversation and whatnot. And I think we're seeing a lot of the same things happen in our political discourse and just, I mean, discourse in general. One of the interesting articles that I found on this was something from The Atlantic titled "People Aren't Meant to Talk This Much." And essentially, it's a somewhat lengthy quote, but I think it really kind of illustrates this. So I am going to read it real quick. Online media gives the every person access to channels of communication previously reserved for big business. Starting with the World Wide Web in the 1990s and continuing into user-generated content of the aughts and social media of the 2010s, control over public discourse has moved from media organizations, governments, and corporations to average citizens. Finally, people could publish writings, images, videos, and other material without first getting the endorsement of publishers or broadcasters. Ideas spread freely beyond borders. And we also received a toxic dump of garbage.
Well, I couldn't have said it better myself. The only thing I don't agree with is the average citizen, right? I think that, yeah, I think that we lost the art of having a conversation or even a respectful disagreement well before, well, maybe the internet just amplified it in all of its tools and channels. But yeah, you know, I mean, think about the statement or what people always say, you never talk about politics and religion. And you know, I don't, well, why not? Both things are important to people, and you should
might offend somebody.
That's not really.
Andre's like, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, I really don't. Like, it's sometimes you have questions, or sometimes you have an opinion, and it doesn't mean that you're married to that opinion at all. It just means that, you know, hey, this is how I feel or see something. And if you're able, and sometimes you're able to learn something about the other person's position and like grow from there. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it changes your position, but it gives you more inputs to like probably form better decisions. It's just amazing how, you know, and I think back to some comments that I was peeking through on, like just on some stuff where somebody says, you don't know what cracker means. You don't know what, do you want me to enlighten you? You don't know this. Like, you don't know what I know, right? Like, that's not even a conversation. You're making accusations of, or you're trying to tell me that or you're giving the perception that I'm inferior to you without giving like your insights. Yeah. That's how people talk every day now. That's what the discourse is boiled down to. Yeah. I see it a lot I used to see it a lot with Democrats who are quote unquote progressive. Like, how are you going to tell me what it's like to be Black in America? Like, help me understand your insight, Mr. or Mrs. or Miss, or whatever, white person. Like, you can't tell me that you understand how to solve anything in my community or my culture.
But I watched that Donald Glover music video.
God, that made me so sick, man. Like, the fact that this is America became like this, I don't know what word to use, but it just made people feel like they got it. I'm like, no, and Donald Glover doesn't speak for me. So let's just start there. I remember somebody asked me at E Area how I like the new Lizzo album. And you know what my response was? Who's Lizzo?
How do you not love and support Lizzo?
I was like, who and what's a Lizzo? Oh, it's this new Black singer. I'm like, what does she sing? Right? So don't assume Lizzo is representative of every Black person. I don't know anything. I still to this day know nothing about her. Or
she played a flute recently that upset some people.
Upset a lot of people. So yeah. I just rambled on there, but it's like, it's just so annoying. It's yeah.
Yes, this I'm going to be like Mr. I read articles and have quotes from them today because this all got me thinking. And I feel like it helps to, support some of the opinions and whatnot that we're kind of throwing out here. But there was this other article from NPR that was titled, "Dude, I'm Done When Politics Tears Families and Friendships Apart." Right. And basically it was outlining these people from both sides of the political spectrum who had cut off, even if it was just a single friend or a family member or something like that, because essentially they disagreed on politics. And I think it was mostly centered around the 2020 election. But one of the studies that they quoted, which I believe was from the Wesleyan Ministry or Media Research group, was that nearly 80% of Americans now have just a few or no friends at all across the aisle. Actually, this was according to Pew Research. And the animosity goes both ways, that essentially once you discover that you have a friend who doesn't vote like you or who doesn't support the same political candidates that you do, or a family member, now it's perfectly acceptable to just say, well, you're dead to me. Like I'm shunning you. I'm blocking you on all my social media channels. I'm blocking your number on my phone. Like, don't call me, don't text me, don't reach out even if you're in need of something, because your opinion is so, horrible that I can't even stomach to be associated with you in any which way.
I think that's an acceptable response. But I also think that the underlying cause is both factions of the extreme. Well, let me just back up. There's a lot more independence. There's a lot more independence in the country than there are people that affiliate with parties. So let me start there.
I want to say it's like 70%, right?
No,
60 to 70%, something like that. Is independent.
Well, that's why I'm starting to get very uninterested in polls and like different charts and stuff, because the last thing I saw was like 46% or something like that. And independents decide
81%.
All right. Well,
no, actually, this is saying 81% continue to lean toward either the Republican or Democratic Party, but this was from 2019. So
yeah, I don't know. So let's just say, just for simple math, 50% of the country are unaffiliated. And then you have 50% of the country that is split between two affiliated parties. What was I saying? Oh, and those two small groups, or the other half of the conversation, gets all the, it sucks out all the air in the room. Like Kanye West. It sucks out all the air in the room. Like Donald Trump. It sucks out all the air in the room. Like just talking points. Last week, I had a couple friends, like literally this happened to me very recently. I didn't know what to do. And well, I knew what to do, but I just didn't. It just keeps reoccurring where I'm like, what are we doing? It was the student loan forgiveness was brought up. And the question was, how are we paying for that? My response was, I don't know. I also didn't benefit from the Trump tax cuts. How are we paying for that? So I'm really not interested in it. I'm not interested in either one of those conversations. And then somebody, another friend said, well, what if you're making six figures and you get a $10,000 or up to 20,000? Well, he said 10,000. I said, well, it could be up to 20,000. So let's go with, whatever. You're getting that written off or forgiven. I'm like, well, that's a good question. But let's say you're making six figures and you have 3 kids and you're the only one working.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a different dynamic to look at, right? Or let's look at, if you're making six figures in certain parts of this country, 6 figures is not really a lot, like in Southern California or in Manhattan. I mean,
it's barely enough to survive.
Yeah. Now, I'm not picking a side. I'm just asking like other questions associated with the questions I'm being asked. Yeah. But both their questions were like, I've seen them in advertisements. Yep. I'm like, you're a waitress, or you paid for college, and now you're being asked to pay for somebody else's college. Okay. I didn't benefit from the Trump tax cuts.
Right. I paid off my student loan debts, so I'm not going to benefit from that.
Right.
I didn't benefit from the Trump tax cuts either. So like neither plan is helping me out, right?
Right.
But I don't know. I guess I'm missing that half a child, so they don't really care.
So I think that being able to the rhetoric that's being put out, I think it's relevant, but we don't ask follow-up questions, or we don't even like think about what additionally, how does this scenario, how could it play out in different ways? And it's old.
Well, how often on this podcast have we sat here and talked about the lack of critical thinking? Right. And that's what I think plays into this. It's that people hear something or they see something on a political ad that, that sparks something inside them, right? It's either anger or outrage. Maybe it's an emotional attachment to something, whatever it is. And then they hold on to that, right? And then they go out into another conversation somewhere or another setting and they repeat that, regardless of the fact that they may not have a great understanding of exactly what that was, right? They just remember that thing from that one clip. And that, I think, is where those conversations become, in my mind, disingenuous, right? Especially when
I don't know if that's true, and here's why. Because both of my friends, like I've done them, I'm not going to paint them with that brush, but I do feel it's my responsibility to push back on the lack of thoughtfulness of asking the question, right?
Well, and I guess maybe a better way to look at it is that bringing it up, right, and saying, recently I saw this political ad that mentioned that kind of asked the question,
let
like,
me
how
circle
are we
back
gonna...
around.
Yeah.
It was literally asked to me, "What do you think about the student loan forgiveness?" Like, that's how it was presented to me. I'm like, whoa. Okay. So I was like that. So let me just. It wasn't a. So that's why.
And your response was, I don't really think anything about it because it's not impacting me.
Right. And and I can also I can lean back on the fact that, remember the Trump tax cuts, something else I'm not sure how we're going to pay for, didn't help me either. So that's not the hill I'm willing to die on, basically.
Right. You don't have a dog in those fights.
Right. So there's a lot of things that we're paying for as a country, or we're charging as a country, that we don't know how we're going to pay for, that we're doing anyway.
I mean, yeah, and that's nothing new,
right?
To be clear, right? That's that's been going on for decades now, and I think, it's something that ultimately, right, those bills come due at some point. I think there is a lot of can kicking that happens in politics where it's like, well, I'm going to do this now because it's going to get me votes, or it's going to swing, opinion polls, which I know are very important to you, Andre, about, my approval rating is going to go up if I do this. But ultimately, I recognize, or maybe I don't even care, that this is going to create a problem 10, 15 years down the road, or that I'm adding to the national deficit, which, granted, right, the deficit is trillions of dollars right now in debt that we owe. And yet, and so, like, in a way, right, both those things, the Trump tax cuts and the student loan forgiveness, are a drop in the bucket compared to what we already owe. That's not to say that that's an acceptable way to, do your finances, is like, well, I already owe trillions, so what's another couple of billion or a couple $100 billion, right? No, that's not, I'm not, you understand maybe.
I understand what you're saying. And that's why I just want to be cautious. It's not, I don't think people are doing it. So the article in NPR, I haven't read it, but I can gather. That's why I said it's an acceptable response to shun them. Yeah, to be like, I don't want to deal with that. Right? I just don't want to deal with that. I'm not but I'm not wired that way. I'm going to be like, yeah, that's a great question. It is. It's sure.
All right, but like I got to understand this a little bit more. What makes you feel like that's an acceptable response? Because I feel like not that it's every single person's obligation or their responsibility or duty to, dive into
Chris,
headlong.
Some people aren't built that way. That's just the way it is. It's got to be for a lot of people. It has to be stressful to have
those elements in your life.
Yeah.
Like I can understand that, but at the same time, don't you think there should be room for someone to say, you know what, we don't see eye to eye on this, so maybe this isn't something that we should spend a lot of time talking about.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's an acceptable response too. I'm not saying either one is right or wrong. I'm saying I'm not asking you what you would do. I'm saying
no, I know, but I'm just saying that I feel like
I think it's acceptable.
I don't like that you support this person or that you voted for this person, so I'm not going to talk to you anymore. Just feels like, more of this extreme stuff that we're seeing on a regular basis.
I don't necessarily think it's extreme. I think it's how people are choosing to cope with the pressure. And hear me out. There have been times in my own personal family where I haven't been shunned, but I haven't been invited to things because some brilliant person decides to ask me what I think about something. And it's not what they want to hear. It isn't. It has no reflection on my character as a person. But
look, that was that one time. That's because my other friends were. No, I'm just kidding. It wasn't me.
But you see my point. There's.
Yes.
It's okay to have a. I'm not expecting people to change for my benefit, and it's not my responsibility for them to change for my benefit.
I agree.
So I think it's.
All right. So let me present a scenario that happened to me. Tell a little story here. So I had a friend who I was, not like super close with, but was, like part of a circle of friends. And when we would hang out in person, we'd rib each other and, kind of tease each other about a bunch of stuff. But ultimately, like, I knew that he was a good guy. And like we liked each other. We had mutual respect for each other. And we got our families together regularly. And around 2016, he got very into like this libertarian viewpoint. And he had always kind of espoused this libertarian thing. It wasn't like he all of a sudden was like, Joe, but also seemed to be some very, it felt like he was very in support of what Trump was kind of pitching and what he was going for. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I reached a point where on social media, I stopped following him. Right.
Sure.
Because the person that he was online was a completely different person than who he was in person. And there was another get together and we were sitting there chatting about something. And he goes, man, I gotta say, I was pretty upset because you didn't comment on this thing when I posted this online. And it was, I don't even remember specifically what it was, but it was like something related to his family. And I said, honestly, I stopped following you because I wanted to be able to still hang out with you in person because you're a different person here face to face than you are when you're online.
Mm-hmm.
And when I see that stuff online, it triggers this response in me that I want to reply. And then we get into an argument about it. And then there's these feelings of animosity that develop so that the next time that I have the opportunity to see you in person, I'm feeling like I don't want to. And I didn't want that. Like I didn't want to lose you as a friend because we didn't agree politically and because it was happening online. Like we could have those same conversations in person and it was completely different.
Right.
Right. And that's another element of it where
Are you still friends?
No, not now. But it wasn't like
it wasn't because of
driven.
us, right?
Yeah.
So those are. You're being honest. So that's kudos to you. That's an acceptable response, right? You're allowed. I believe if you're being more genuine, if you're not hiding, or if you're not trying to be somebody you're not with the response, and if you can be honest and say, "Hey, I really don't jive with that," and what you're doing here, I just don't want to deal with it. Fine. Right. And I'm good with that. I'd be like, all right, cool. I tell you, like, hey, if I'm out of line or if I'm out of bounds or whatever, just tell me. May not change my direction, but
right.
I'm going to be.
And I would never expect it to either.
Right.
And I think like I hear what you're saying there, right? That it's not, nobody has an obligation to change who they are or what they believe in order to make other people comfortable.
Right.
I definitely understand that and can agree with that. I mean, I think that was.
It's just hard
one of those things.
It's hard to accept that's part of reality. That's part of life, and I'm okay with that. I accept that without like flinching. I know I'm going to more than likely say what I'm thinking, and unless there's something that's saying that's not the hill you want to die on today, but there's a very good chance, that I'm going to say what I'm thinking. There's a very good chance I'm not going to let any of my friends, say something that I just think is what I don't believe is aligned with their character, and without acknowledging that and without addressing it. So, but that's the way I'm wired. And I think people expect that from me. And I think that, and it's not like this fake, I don't know what that persona is on the internet, but I'm a free thinker. No, you're not. You're spouting out stuff just to say it. And I'd rather like, hey, I don't have a solve to this. I don't have a solution. I don't know if that's, this is what I think about that situation. And I'm not going to feel one way or the other if somebody has an opposing view. I think that's that's why I kind of get frustrated with the fact that, reasonable people, which I believe most people are, can't have conversations anymore without somebody, feeling, it's not even like they feel offended. It's just that I was thinking about two things, and this is what kind of prompted that text. Watching House of the Dragon. So no spoilers, but there's a line in there where the worm, or whatever her name is, or whoever the little whisper person is, I don't remember off the top of my head. She says the
spoiler.
There is no power but what the people allow you to take.
And I just kind of like marinated on that. I'm like, that's really, I believe that. Like, I don't believe that politicians have power. I think they have short-term influence because their power is not immutable. Right. So
their power is granted to them on behalf of the people,
right,
and by the people. And that's something that, especially when their term is up and they have to run for re-election, that people have a direct influence over.
Yeah.
And even before then, like if you get enough people together.
Look at the UK. Their prime minister just resigned.
Oh, right? Yeah.
Perfect example of that.
Oh, boy.
And the second thing I was thinking about was my feelings on the Broncos game.
Go Broncos country. Let's ride, baby.
Last week, my wife told me to stop watching them play because it was making me very upset. But I later watched, of course, I watched the Monday Night Football game. Yeah. And I went to bed upset. I woke up upset. And I realized that my attachment to my favorite football, like American football team, dictates how I feel about things. Mm-hmm. People have the same affinity for their political views.
Right. Are either of those things healthy in your mind?
Neither one of them are real life.
Right.
Basically. Like,
yeah,
it's just not real life.
Yeah.
It's just like, I'm not taking the snaps. I'm not calling any plays. So the Broncos are having a crappy season. I can accept the results of the season, and I should be able to accept the results of the season without taking it so personal. It's not me on the field. It's not me calling the plays. It's not me making the trades. And that's because that's not healthy. It's just not acceptable it's not realistic to believe that things that are not consistent with your reality, your personal reality, should have that much of a drive in you. But people, they really believe that these political views are they're ingrained into their DNA. They're not.
As a
NC State
20-year NC State fan now,
I knew this was coming.
I understand exactly where you're coming from. I mean, there was probably a good 10 or 15 year period where the outcome of every NC State football or NC State men's basketball game had a direct impact on my mood that day and at least the following day. I mean, when State was kind of good and they would lose, I wouldn't go online because I didn't want to see headlines. I didn't want to read about it, all that stuff. When State would play really well, oh man, I'm all over it. I got to read every article that talks about how good State did. And it got to a point where as I'm watching these games live, I could feel my heart hurting because of the anxiety over whether or not this game was going to go the way that I wanted it to. And that's where I ultimately had to kind of just turn that off. I had to step away from that and say, that's not healthy. You know what? The outcome of the game has absolutely nothing to do with whether I turn on the TV or I'm watching, or I'm on the ESPN app. And so at the end of the day, I can tune in every once in a while if I want to, and if it's going well, great. And if it's not, hey, you know what? It's not their day, and that's okay. And then after the game's over, I can go back and I can watch highlights if I want to, or I can read about it if I want to, but I don't have to. I don't have to subject myself to that.
To watch the kicker of the Chargers say, well, I mean, and I don't know how I really felt about this, but it kind of made me kind of think about this a little bit more. He goes, first and foremost, I want to thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And my brain immediately went to every rapper that says, I want to thank God for winning this award. I'm like, yo, everything you say in your songs are not things that God is co-signing.
Yeah.
Right.
God's a big Chargers fan. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah.
I mean,
totally not.
I don't know if you can see it in frame here because of how we crop things, but I do have a Phillip Rivers Chargers jersey back here just to give you an idea of how ridiculous my NC State fandom is and how tumultuous my experience as a sports fan in general is. I got one season with Russell Wilson where he went and won a Super Bowl against Andre's Broncos, not trying to strike. And then the next season, it was just payback. They're like, oh, did you enjoy that? Watch him throw this away at the fucking goal line against the Patriots of all people. And I think that game was really the one where I was that broke me as a diehard sports fan. Where,
well, you want to hear how my brain worked and kind of reset itself.
Yeah.
Listening to that kicker say that, I actually thought about, that's probably not.
I like how you were like, do you want me to finish my story that I was telling before you rudely interrupted me? Because I'm going to do that.
No, because I'm going to lose my train of thought. I watched our one of our recent podcasts. And I literally lost my train of thought.
Yeah.
And I've been coaching myself and I will not lose my train of thought. I will not.
Chris will not derail me. Chris will not derail me.
But I literally just thought to myself, that's not a representation of my faith. I would never say that, right? So I think my faith is not commingled into what I do. It's and it just kind of helped me reset, right? I remember in my church, I did a sermon, and they were talking about when you meet people and they ask you about yourself, how quickly are you to identify yourself with your job? Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm Andre. I'm a software engineer. That's not who I am. Right. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a brother. I'm a friend. There are things that define me outside of what I do for a salary.
Right.
And it just helped me to get some perspective, even so to where this whole rant is coming from. I think we just we spiraled out of, like me, I was spiraling out of control and just, collecting all the things as I spiral and associating myself with those things because they were redefining me. And it's not true. My political affiliation is unaffiliated. I believe in policies. What I originally wanted to talk about this week was the GOP's commitment to America. And I can summarize that in like more words than 2 words, like President Biden made in America. But
Maiden,
basically,
MAIDEN,
yeah,
America. I
was like, dude, you could have said USA made or something. I think I don't know. That's not my.
He's old.
It's not my job. I don't want to say that either. I think he just kind of got excited. He was amped up. I can't say that either because he's.
I got 2 words for you. Fuck. Oh, I can't say that. I can't. Made in America. Shit, that's 3 words. Maybe nobody will notice. Just keep going, Joe. You got this. That's
American made. I mean, that's 2 words, Joe. But thank you.
The staffers backstage were just like, oh, fuck, that's going to be all over the news. God damn it.
Oh, man.
Sorry. Here I am derailing you again.
What was I saying? Damn it. He did it. Yeah, I don't want to spiral out of control and just like associate all those things with me. Like, I care about, like, so the GOP's commitment to America, there is no policy in there. It's just lofty, not even lofty. It's just like scare tactics of what they're going to do. And I read through their whole website, and there's nothing there. There's like nothing on nothing on nothing. But what I noticed also is that people that's their team. Which leads us to my next point. People are going to vote, but it's just like how I view sales, right? If you're in sales, please get at me. I don't care. I'm going to say it anyway. You never close a deal.
Right.
You've never closed a deal ever, 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 ever. When somebody buys something, they've already decided. All you've done is reinforce their decision to buy your product. End of story. Voting's the same way. That's why I'm very disinterested in polls. If you're going to vote for Republicans, you've already decided that. If you're going to vote for Democrats, you've already decided that. If you're going to vote and break up your ticket, you've already decided that. Like the advertisements, what your neighbor says, none of that's going to change your decision. If that were true, I don't want to go into all the different scenarios of why that is false. Just understand that. Like the advertisements aren't helping. The rhetoric is not helping. I can tell you who I'm going to vote for. I'm not going to vote for one Republican at all. When I go and vote this weekend, I'm not going to vote for one Republican. You want to hear why? I can't stand the current state of the Republican Party. I hate it. Like it just disgusts me. The fact that they can defend all the things they can defend, it's just so boring to me. I just I'm bored. I'm just bored of you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because when I saw that, on the list of things you want to talk about, voting is important, but it's like being in sales. I was like, where's he going with this? And then the moment you started talking about it, I was like, I get it. See, and this is a good segue into, not even segue, but I think like this is supported in a lot of ways by some of the stuff that I found about yard signs, right? Political yard signs. Who doesn't love them? I don't personally. Drive me crazy, especially here in Wilmington.
Hold on, let me pause.
Okay,
before you go into that.
Yeah.
When I go to the polls,
yeah.
I'm literally going to talk to the little poll Nazis I shouldn't say Nazis.
Poll
in this day and
workers.
age. Poll workers.
Oh, you're talking about
And
the people
as-
who are representing, who are standing out front,
Yep.
handing you a thing, telling you this is who you should vote for. Yeah.
Yep. And I normally ignore them.
Yep. Why are you going to talk to them this time?
Because I just want to actually take the Republican one and take the Democrat one and look the Republican person in the face and say, I used to be a Republican, but the party disgusts me, and I'm going to vote for every Democrat on this list.
What do you hope to accomplish with that?
Nothing.
Okay.
I just want to let them know.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Cool story, bro.
That's what we're doing now. That's what we're doing this week.
Yeah. No, it's just one of those things. I down here in particular, I mean, I know it's really bad in Wake County too.
Oh, it's freaking horrendous.
But I mean, just the amount of waste, both financially and like literal garbage that is being generated by making all of these yard signs that aren't even going in people's yards, that are just ending up at every street corner and every median that they can find. I mean, like, it's gotten so bad that they will stick them in between the little like divider and the concrete medians. Like, that's
it's actually happening in my town.
Yeah.
It's
crazy. Like, I mean, and this, I think, backs up your point that, like, you're not convincing somebody to vote or to vote for a specific candidate, especially with these yard signs, right? I think the yard signs that are actually in people's yards are more about, well, look at me and who I support, right? It's more like neighbors, like, you better recognize, and not so much like hey, this is who I'm supporting because I think they're a good candidate. And, like, it's much more like, I think of like Alabama and Auburn, right? Like,
oh, that game was disgusting.
Well, that was Alabama, Tennessee.
Out in Tennessee, I don't.
But I'm just saying, in terms of like rivalry, right? Where, and this was one of the things that I saw in one of these articles. I'm trying to figure out which one it was. I think it was this one from numero.ai, or maybe it was the Uproar. Either way, I'll find out where it is and I'll quote it later. But essentially, it was saying that, they witnessed one house that had a whole bunch of yard signs, a whole bunch of Joe Biden yard signs, right? And then, like, a few days later, the neighbor across the street had decorated their entire house in Trump flags and all this, like, Trump paraphernalia, essentially, right, to counteract the Joe Biden guy across the street. And that's where I think, like, we had this as something we were going to kind of talk about, and you've already brought it up, but this fanaticism, right? This viewing this as though it's your political sports team that you're supporting, and that, on the one hand, your team doesn't cheat, but the other one always does, right? That if you lose, it's because the refs or the election officials or whoever it is, right, were cheating on behalf of the other team. That, we have to support our team no matter what, no matter who it is that's playing for them, no matter what horrible things they've been accused of. We have to support them because that's our team. And we identify with that, right? That's a huge part of who we are inside. I'm saying this as a dude that loves NC State. Like, I do. Yeah. I love NC State. But I will sit there, and when those guys are caught cheating, I'll say, yeah, they're cheating, right? Like, I mean, it's not that hard, guys, to expect more, right, from the teams that you support. Like, are you a Patriots fan who was okay with Tom Brady deflating balls, or with them?
Did Tom Brady deflate the balls himself? No, he did not. Anyway, let's not get into that.
Yeah. Are you a Saints fan who was cool with what's his name, the defensive coordinator that had the whole, like, you knock a guy out of a game and injure him, you get paid extra money, Bountygate?
Are you okay with the Houston Astros stealing the Yankee signs?
Well, yeah, because it's the fucking Yankees.
No, stop. You can't.
Oh, sorry. You kind of You teed that up for me.
Yeah, well, I was hoping that she would be like, yeah, I should probably.
But no, you're right. You are absolutely right. Like, you should not be okay with your team cheating to win. Like, is it worth it, right? Do you feel good if your team has to cheat in order to go win something? Don't you feel like that ultimately taints these championships or whatever?
Remember there were congressional hearings about steroids? Well, you probably
Yes,
were.
I remember the congressional hearing because I was a huge Mark McGwire fan.
Okay.
Huge.
What has that done for baseball? Like, it's tarnished the league, it's tarnished the game. It's never seen anything. So even Aaron Judge is a victim of what happened back in the 90s.
Right.
If you're looking at politics like sports, you want your team to be a team of honor, at least.
You would think. But it's not about that. It's about, it becomes that because you believe everybody else is cheating, it makes it acceptable for your team to cheat too. Right? There's a lot of state fans who look at that, where they want to point the finger at Carolina and be like, well, Carolina cheats all the time, so that's what you got to do, right? Alabama cheats, all these other teams cheat, and so in order for us to be on equal footing with them, we have to cheat too. That ultimately the rules shouldn't apply to anybody if they don't apply to everybody.
Well, here's the thing about like how I look at sports in general. It's not that they're role models. It's that it's a new, in my mind, it's a new arena for gladiators, right?
Sure.
We don't have, well, we do. Well,
you have MMA, but.
Yeah, I was going to say we don't have true combat sports, but MMA sometimes is like just somebody getting the crap beat out of them. So there should be honor in the battle, and I just don't think that that's important. My parents raised me to be an honorable person, right? When you make a mistake, own up to it. Don't run from it.
Yeah.
When you're, I learned not to be a liar when I was a kid because I got my butt beat one time. And I was like, oh, I'm not even good at that, so I'm not going to do that again. Now I'm just sometimes too honest, or I keep my mouth shut. But even when I keep my mouth shut, I struggle with the fact that I wasn't being honest.
Yeah.
So having honor is, now I'm going to just kind of diverge. Like the conservative party says they're conserving something. It's not honor. It's not character. The Democrats say they're about, helping everybody. That's not true all the time either.
Nope.
It's about being better than the Republicans in most instances. So,
which is a really low bar, by the way.
Yes, right. There's no character or honor in that. So if your team is sucking, it sucks that one time. Are you winking at me?
No, I was winking at my daughter. She wants to come say hi.
Oh, so I was like, don't be winking me, dudes. So, I mean, I don't know. I the team analogy is something I figured out with the political game. I just really not figured it out, but I just started to really key in. Like, look at Trump supporters.
Yeah. Like
the way Trump supporters like state fans. They tailgate. Or sports fans, right? They tailgate.
Jesus.
They've got jerseys.
I'm sure there's lots of state fans that voted for Trump, but that's neither here nor there.
That's not the point. It's just state and Trump. We're like this.
Stop it.
But
or I'm not going to be your friend anymore.
I know, right? Snowflake.
I'm so triggered.
But I just think it's not the. I don't know. I just think it's sad. It's really sad.
No, it really is, because ultimately what has happened, and I think like the Herschel Walker campaign.
Oh,
right. I know we talked about this recently, and I don't want to spend a bunch of time on it, but I think it really illustrates and really most of the, not even most, but there's a lot of candidates that you see this year where character doesn't matter, right? ability doesn't matter. Dana Loesch said it best. I don't care what he did. I want control of the Senate. I will vote.
McConnell.
Yeah, I will support anybody who gets me to what I want, which is power, control. And that's what all of this has become about. It's not about going to Washington to try and make things better for the people in your state. It's not about going to Washington to improve the country as a whole. It's about, we have to control this, because if we don't control it, the other side does, and that means they won and we lost, and we have to deal with it for another 2 years.
McConnell just said something very similar. I actually watched John Oliver's episode on transgender rights, and he said he pulled up some guy that was talking about how they're phrasing they're picking their messaging to talk about just like transgender people and how they should make it to where it seems like sexualized and seems very perverse. I've said multiple times, Republicans they just want to win, right? And I don't know where it was, but I saw a Democrat that says that a Republican that said that Democrats are trying to win and they're better at it than they are. I don't know if that's true. Or maybe in recent years they've gotten better at it. I don't know. But my point in all that is it's not a game.
Right.
Like we're not playing a game, ladies and gentlemen. We're hopefully putting people in a position to help other people's lives, to represent larger groups of people, to improve their cities, their states, the country.
Yeah.
But we've turned politics into some type of crappy game.
Yeah.
It's like I'm just not interested.
I mean, we've turned it into entertainment.
Right.
Right. And we talked about this a lot in the infotainment versus news episode, where like not everything needs to be entertaining. And that's where I think in a lot of ways Trump bridged that gap in 2016, where it was, must-see TV because you never knew, no matter which side you were on, right? Whether you loved him or you hated him, you wanted to tune in because you wanted to see, oh, this has got to be the day that he steps in it and it's all over, right? Which never came. Or this is another day where he's going to own the libs and I get to revel in that because that's my guy. That's my team that I support right there.
I don't even know what that means.
What, owning the libs?
Yeah, I drove through Western Pennsylvania twice in the past week, and I saw a lot of Trump stuff, or enough to make me notice it. I actually saw a guy who owns his own insurance company and he's wrapped his vehicle, and he's got just the most absurd things about. He's got a picture of Joe Biden saying, "This is stupid politics," or Looney Tunes or something like that, and some other crap on there. And I'm like, I don't think he realizes that. Like that's probably not the way to promote your business. Yeah. I'm like, you're losing there, buddy. But looking at all the old, like, vacant factories just kind of reminded me, like, Trump didn't go to Western Pennsylvania and bring that crap.
No. I mean, and granted, is that really the role of the president? Right?
Of course not.
No.
Of course not.
Exactly. Right. And that's the other thing that I think you and I have talked about a lot, either just individually or on this podcast, is it's like, stop looking at these federal elections as the end all be all as to where this country is headed. And I do think that to some degree, the GOP and maybe even the Democrats to some point have started to recognize, like, our focus should really be at the lower local levels or state levels in terms of the candidates that we're putting up and where we're supporting. I mean, that's like this whole push for school board control is not because you've just got a bunch of nut jobs that want to run for school board, elections. It's because they're being kind of pushed and helped and aided by the political parties because they recognize, well, if we control the school boards, then we control what information gets in and out. We have more control over, bathroom use by transgender individuals. We have more control over what books are allowed in the library. We have more control over, whatever it is. Like, it doesn't.
I was talking to somebody last week, and we were talking about just some issues in the Black community. And I mentioned segregation. His response was, well, they kind of scared of that by making Christian academies. And my brain stopped and had to reboot. I was like, oh, crap. He's right.
Yeah.
And I was this close to researching how many private schools are in the South. And I was this close to researching how many of them are Christian academies, just because I overlooked that.
Yeah.
Right. On my way into Raleigh this morning, I saw Tales Academy and Cary Christian Academy stickers, because it's nothing says ruin your car's appearance like putting stickers all over it. But it just reminded me of
my stickers look great.
It just reminded me that, why is this whole school choice thing such a big thing? Like, there's so many things where we've just missed. Like, I'm going to vote. That's not the issue. The issue is that, what if your team sucks? When are you going to have your rebuild year, right?
Yeah.
When are you going to look back and say, maybe we're not calling the right plays? And it's not about winning through fear. It's not about being in the locker room yelling at people. Not a lot of coaches probably do that anymore, because it doesn't improve performance.
Right.
And if we're going to continue with that analogy, what is the GOP's, like, what's their end game? Is it this Christian nationalism? Well, you're the same party that talks about the Constitution. The Constitution says nothing about being a Christian.
Right.
Like, so you have to.
But it's like a lot of things, right? It's selective.
Your character would
Christianity.
Would say,
it's selective,
sure.
Conservatism. It's states' rights until we get Roe v. Wade overturned, and then we need a federal abortion ban, right?
Then that's indicative of your character being an act.
But they've also identified that there are enough people out there who don't care about their character, right? I think it's part of the issue that ultimately character has become less of a dividing line for people when it comes to who they're willing to support, and it's more about the 1 to 2 issues that they feel are really important, and that they will support anybody who is a mouthpiece for those issues. Whether or not those people believe in it, whether or not those people are actually going to do anything to support those once they get into office, it's all about, like, well, who's willing to sell me the best lie now before I elect them? That's who I'll vote for. But even then, I mean, like you're saying, or like we said earlier, you're not convincing anybody, right? You've already made up your mind going into the election who it is that you're going to vote for. It's why all of this stuff about Herschel Walker is not moving the needle, right? Because they've already made their,
they decided a long time ago.
Yeah, exactly. I don't care what you say about him. It was the same thing with Trump, right? Everybody thought when the Access Hollywood tapes came out, that's it. That's got to be it. That's the thing that's going to bury him. No president could get elected if he's got that out there. But everybody had already said, don't care, doesn't matter. I want Trump. And not everybody, obviously, but enough people did, right? I mean, same thing with Hillary and the email, right? Yeah. I mean, whether or not, wherever you stand on that, when Comey came out and made the statement that they were investigating her for the emails, you think that really influenced people to make a decision on whether or not they were going to vote for Hillary Clinton? No. Those people who didn't vote for her already didn't like her enough to not vote for her.
I voted for every position that year except for president. I would not vote for Trump. I would not vote for Hillary Clinton. Maybe I'm part of the problem. But
I mean, look, I think I think that's like saying, food, you are responsible for food waste because you didn't eat every grain of food that was on your plate. No, corporations and farms waste thousands of millions of pounds more food every single day than any individual family probably does in a decade. And yet it's recycling, right? It's all of these things where the end consumer ultimately gets blamed or feels some level of responsibility for this, even though the responsibility starts way farther up the food chain.
But I think in politics, it plays differently. I think that we have... I don't think Hillary should have been on the ballot, to be honest with you.
Right.
I think she should have disqualified herself. I think Trump should have disqualified himself.
But neither of them were going to do that, right?
Right.
I mean, like, Hillary might have been slightly more likely to do that, but I think in some ways, I don't know, not based on anything she said, but that there was always this air of kind of like, it's my time, right? I put up with Bill and all of his shenanigans through 2, terms. I've been Secretary of State. I've done all this good. I should be qualified enough to be the president. It had nothing to do
with qualified. It had to do with, it was probably 60% qualifications, 40% are you the right person?
Yeah. And I agree that she wasn't. Like, I didn't like Hillary as the Democratic nominee either. I did look at it as a lesser of two evils kind of deal. I was like, and I understand. I mean, like, I do. I really do. Like, I don't fault you for that. I don't think anybody should be faulted for looking at it and going, I'm not picking either of these people.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'm
good. Hard pass.
That's why you got a lot of third-party votes this election, right? But I think then you look at, well, what happened over the 4 years of Trump, and you see, wow, turnout for the 2020 election, outranked any that we'd seen.
Yeah. I mean, and
even Joe Biden, right? I didn't want Joe Biden to be the Democratic nominee. I didn't think that he was necessarily the best person for the job, going through all of the what do you call it? The
debates?
The primaries.
Primaries?
Yeah.
I think, honestly, I think he had more leadership qualities than anybody else up there. And I'll marry it back to this. Kamala Harris lost me when she wouldn't realize that she already won the debate about busing.
Right.
And she kept going back to it. I was like, nah, I don't like that. Tulsi Gabbard, she never seemed interesting to, and I can just go down the whole line. But the person I would have felt more comfortable with would have been Kamala Harris, but it showed the type of person she was when she did that. I thought that was tacky.
What do you have against Bernie Sanders?
A lot.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, quite a lot. And then I'm going to mirror what Kamala Harris said too. I watched some clips of Val Demings serve Marco Rubio his lunch. And I don't want to take out of context, but she beat him with like a baseball bat on that debate stage.
And you feel like that was not what she should have done? You feel
I didn't see the whole debate.
Right.
I think there are some things where it's like, no, you probably need to stop drawing blood. Because I think what's important at the end of the day, if you want to instill some confidence back into our political system, we need to get to a point where we have honor and integrity. And that's a long haul. So every time we take those moments and we make them a bloodbath, it's a turnoff. Like, I can just see younger people saying, that's disgusting. Is that what this country represents? It's no different than a dictatorship. It's no different than listen to Putin, justify his actions, or
it's no different than watching a boxing match, right?
Right.
Or an MMA fight where, like I've watched the clips because for some reason over the last like 2 months, I got really into watching like MMA fights on YouTube. Mm-hmm. Like I'd never been a big MMA UFC guy. And then what I watched one fight in particular. It was Chael Sonnen's first fight against Anderson Silva. And I was like, holy shit, this guy's going to beat him. And then he didn't. Kudos to Anderson Silva for that. But spoiler alert for that like 10-year-old fight. But I do like one of the things that you notice is there's a lot of clips of like, 10 times guys could have gone for the kill shot and didn't because they already knew that they'd won. And there's clips of guys who are like literally telling the referee like he's out. Call it. And the ref's like, no. He's like, I'm not hitting him again. Call it. And then the ref goes over and says, oh, yeah, right? And I think to some degree, to draw a slightly weird parallel, like that's what you want in your politician. You want a politician that looks at that and goes, all right, like I made my point. I don't have to beat up. Maybe my focus needs to be more on myself and how I can pitch myself as opposed to continuing to bludgeon my opponent. And that's where I think, again, right, with the negative campaign ads, it all kind of circles back here where it's like, at what point does this become more about this other person isn't suitable as opposed to I'm the best candidate for the job and here's why?
Well, to the person that made mention of my Spider-Man mug, there's a reason I'm a self-professed pacifist. So,
because I'm going to pass my fist through your motherfucking face.
So, and I say that.
Sorry, I've been waiting for that since.
Man, that. Huh.
All right. I do. Like, there's multiple things that I have to point out here. One, Spider-Man beats the shit out of people
all the time.
Right? So, like, okay. And two, I'm being like, you have some colored belt of some sort.
We're not talking about that.
Okay. But I'm just saying, like, the man owns a belt and it's not just a brown leather one. Like,
yeah, it's not the point. And I think that kind of, that's the stuff that gets your ass beat. Just for the record,
but we're not talking about that.
We're not talking about
Chris, that. You crossed the line there, but I'm gonna threaten this guy.
I'm not threatening anybody.
I know you're not threatening.
I'm just saying, like that's how, like
they're
that's
not gonna
how
watch
people,
this video because we barely talking about Trump.
That's how people like think about it this way. The people that the unassuming, like there was a video of a Navy SEAL, and somebody asked, like I was doing an interview in a podcast and said, what if this happened to you? How would you win this fight? He goes, well, no, he goes, what would you do? He goes, I wouldn't get in the fight. Right. There are people that don't need, there's nothing to prove. Right. I think the other part to that is it's a leadership question. Do you want a leader that has no temperament?
Right.
Right. And I'm going to preface it. I meant what I said about Don Jr. But at the same time, in self-reflection, that's me venting, right? But
I mean,
if
it wasn't an active threat. In the sense
first of all,
that,
it doesn't really matter,
right?
Because his family no longer. So I read all the comments, and his family no longer has protection from the Secret Service. So next, move on. But it's just a matter of, yeah. But I bet you, I'm willing to bet money, even in a debate. Well, in any confrontation, you're not going to just bludgeon your opponent. That could be murder or attempted murder, and it's just it's a sign of weakness, or it's a sign of lack of self-control. I just don't respect that.
Do you think that part of it, because I feel like we see a lot more of that now, right? Do you think that part of it stems from this desire to have the viral clip, right?
I think so, yeah.
Because I think so too. I think there's a lot of it where it's like, I don't know which one of these things is going to be the one that pushes, that gets everybody's attention. So I'm just going to throw them all out there and see what sticks.
Well, you know what's interesting? Pete Buttigieg, I've seen him do interviews on Fox and a few other places.
Yeah,
he was very unassuming, but he's very good at his job. He knows how to think quick on his feet.
Would you support him as a candidate for president?
From what I've seen, yeah, I would.
Yeah. Do you feel like he's gained a certain level of experience and knowledge over the last 2 years in serving in the Biden administration? Because it sounded like based on your previous statement, that you didn't see the leadership qualities in him during the primaries that you saw in President Biden.
Right.
Okay.
And that would literally be somebody I was like, that's interesting. I wasn't expecting that. So I think that what we should be demanding of people that want to take that role is that they have strong leadership qualities. Yeah. I can look back and say that President Obama didn't vote for him twice, right? In retrospect, a lot of strong leadership qualities, still failures or things that I don't approve of or agree with. But overall, strong leadership qualities. So I think that's what we should be asking people. It's not about how somebody can pitch the job to you or their prediction of how they're going to do the job.
Right.
It's like, where are you at now, and what are you showing me that can help me to believe and have confidence in your ability to do the job? So I think that's something that we should be asking, because you think about a Glenn Youngkin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was hyped up on the topics he was talking about, not his lack of clarity of doing the job.
Right.
Now he's just playing
qualifications.
Right. And he's playing a game of manipulation. And I don't think that's the right thing for Virginia. It's interesting how Governor Cooper in North Carolina, although he's had a couple of battles, he's kind of held true and has been consistent in his leadership ability, to the contrast of a DeSantis or a Greg Abbott.
Ask about DeSantis.
Right. Then you've got the guy in Maryland. His name escapes me now.
Larry Hogan.
Consistent. You've got Sununu. Consistent. Has nothing to do with their politics, has nothing to do with their party affiliation, but they've been consistent. And that's where I think that people, that would be one of the things I would say, hey, when you're looking for people to elect, except for me this year, I just don't want to vote for any Republican. I'm looking for leadership qualities, and I want to see where they make me feel confident that they can be a good leader. And sometimes being a good leader means working across the aisle. Sometimes it means negotiation. Does it mean compromise? It means negotiation. And yeah, that's kind of where my head's at. Yeah. And I meant what I said about Don Jr. He's a crackhead. He's always cooked up.
I mean, I don't know what else I could add to it at this point.
It's like me saying, like, think about it. Like, here's what, to that person, I want to say this. I'm a big Ice Cube fan. I'm not a big fan of all of his music. There's a good amount of his songs that I like.
We love you, Cube.
I respect Cube. Big fan. I disagree with Louis Farrakhan, right? So, but I'm never going to go off the reservations and say, well, just because Cube, is a supporter of Farrakhan and he respects him, that I'm going to be like, nah, I'm going to rail on that dude. I mean, I still respect the dude, right? So I'm not going to go out of my way to say something slick, thousands of miles away from Ice Cube, and hopes I never see him, and for him to say, "Yo, say it to my face." So that's what I don't respect about, like, if you look at the January 6th speech they were giving with Giuliani talking about trial by combat. What? You're gonna do what? Roger Stone, he's got a clip of him saying, let's get to the fucking violence. What are you going to do? Yeah. You've got John Eastman talking about war. You're not going to do anything. So unless you're going to say these same things to somebody's face, don't say them at all. You look stupid.
Or follow through on them the way that,
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
Giuliani, are you volunteering as tribute in these trials by combat? Because somehow I don't think so. Although Trump would probably gladly throw you up there.
Yeah, Trump was like, yo, I'm going to go there. I'm going to be right. Dude never showed up.
Oh, but he wanted to. Remember? Like, he almost fought that secret security or Secret Service.
Yeah. Okay.
Secret security.
If he was even he's like, I didn't do that. So
Why would I fight him?
that's
He's a big guy. He's a big guy. Although people probably would have liked me more if I did, because they'd be like, I didn't know you had it in you.
because he's like what 350, trying to like anyway. So that's the point I was trying to make. Don't say slick stuff about somebody or like what you're going to do, and then when it's time to do it, you're crickets.
Yeah,
just nothing. And that's what.
Which is why I didn't say anything, because I'm crickets all the time.
Just saying, but say that stuff where it matters, B.
But I wish a motherfucker would.
I know, right?
No, I don't. I mean, you talk about yourself as a certified pacifist. I am very much a pacifist. I am not somebody that's out here trying to pick fights and stuff like that.
And then don't say slick stuff and make me think you're a threat. Because the minute I think you're a threat and I see you, I'm not even talking to you. Those are things like people that they get on their keyboards and they start talking real breezy, and then things happen to them. Like, why are you surprised? Right? So my point about Ice Cube, I'm not saying Ice Cube is like, I mean, I respect Ice Cube, but I'm not going to say anything slick about something. My point is, I don't agree with that part. That is the one reservation. I would say that part to his face, like, hey, I don't understand your views on this, respectfully.
Right.
But I'm not going to say some slick stuff.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Because it's not about winning the keyboard war. Right? It's not about, and that's where I think like just so much of this stuff, it's so frustrating because so much of this does exist online now. You know, like so much of our daily lives exists online, and behind these keyboards or these screens or these, pseudonyms, these usernames, and it provides a level of like this falsehood, this false security about, well, I can just say and do whatever I want because these people, I'm never going to run into these people in real life. And that's like, to bring it back, the guy that I stopped following, right? Like I saw him frequently in real life. And that's why I stopped wanting to follow him on social media. Not because he disagreed with or had a different opinion about like who should be president or like anything like that. It was more just that like, I found myself wanting to say things that I wouldn't say to his face in response to things that he was saying. You know what I mean? Like, and again, things that I know he wouldn't say in that same way to me personally.
Right.
If we were standing there having that conversation. And so I think it's just, proof positive that the internet is terrible. You shouldn't be like, if you're on the internet right now, get off, go do something else, go outside, read a book, subscribe to the Chris and Andre show before you do that though. Technology and the internet has done a bunch of amazing things.
Funny thing, I was in DC at Union Station, and I was walking out of a bookstore, right? This guy pushes me against the wall and says, "Stand back." And, I'm like, my dude, for what are we? And I saw the earpiece dangling from his thing. I'm like, yeah, this guy, he knows somebody or he's doing something important. And I saw the lapel pin. I'm like, all right, so I need to like relax. And as he kind of lets things settle down at the bottom level, there's Chelsea and Bill Clinton walking through, right? I have said some disparaging things about Bill Clinton, even though I voted for him twice. I was like, this guy's on some, I don't know what, I think it was the crime bill that he signed, and it pissed me off. I didn't like bump into him like 2 feet away from him, but we happen to be in the same location. Yeah. Right. So you never know. You run into somebody and all of a sudden, like, they remembered what you said. There's an interesting clip of Snoop Dogg talking about how him and Tupac were running up on Nas. Right? Yes. And Nas was just like, "Nah, I like all your music, fam. I love you, man.
I'm a big fan."
Yeah. And Pac was like, "Yo, I scared that nigga, right?" And Pac was like, "Nah, he let you go." I mean, Snoop was like, "He let you go." I mean, you're gonna run up on somebody that they heard what you said, so be cute if you want to. and see how it plays out for you. But that's one of my favorite clips on the internet. I'm like, yo, man, the world is not a big place, man. You're bound to bump into somebody that heard you say some cute, slick shit. So,
all right,
just remember that.
Since my semi-humiliating stories seem to be fairly popular with the internet, I think I'm just going to start. Like, we'll have a segment called, Chris humiliates himself. I have a story that I feel like kind of plays into this a little bit. All right. So in high school, there was a girl in my chemistry class. We ended up being lab partners, and I thought she was cute. And so I was kind of like,
take your shot.
Yeah. And she had a boyfriend, right? That I didn't know about at the time, but she was like, I'm seeing somebody. And I'm like, okay. But we were still lab partners. And so, like the subtle flirting, like, I'm still interested, but, like, I get it. You're taken. And then she's like, oh, I'm not, like, we broke up. And I'm like, okay, cool. And so, like, we started hanging out. It was like Valentine's Day. I made that mistake where I'm like, oh, let's go out for Valentine's Day for the first time ever.
Man.
Anyways, like, so we became a couple, only for me to then find out that she had not broken up with this dude.
McFly.
So, like, that created a whole thing, right? My sister and I decided that we were going to have a house party when my parents were out of town, and everything's cool until these two dudes show up, the boyfriend and his friend, the ex-boyfriend at that point. And they wanted to fight, but it was my house party with my friends. So I had plenty of backup, even though I'm not a fighter. I'm just going to throw it. Like, last fight I got in was probably like 6th grade. After that, I was just like, no, I'm not doing that anymore. And so that everything was fine there, and like nobody threw any punches or anything. Fast forward to a couple of years later, my girlfriend from high school is now at UNCW. I came down for the weekend. We're hanging out, and they're like, hey, there's this house party. I'm like, all right, yeah. And so we go over to this house party, find out that the house is the friend of the dude, the ex-boyfriend, right? The one who was at the party trying to start shit. And
how'd that go?
Not well. Not well at all. So, like, I'm in the kitchen, and I'm trying to go get, like, a cup for the keg, and he stops me, and he's like, hey, man, what's up? And I'm like, oh, hey, what's up? Like, I recognized who he was. And he was like, this is my house. And I was like, I did not know that. I was like, is it cool that I'm here? And he was like, yeah, man, it's cool. No worries. That was a long time ago. And he, like, goes to dab it up. And then fucking sucker punches me. And we tumbled through the house, and everybody's, oh, fight. I did not get any good shots or anything. Like, I'll be honest. Like, I kind of got my ass kicked in that fight. The sucker punch didn't help, but he probably would have kicked my ass anyways. And so, like, we left, and it was like maybe another year later. I think it was my sister's boyfriend, who was also down in Wilmington at the time, because she went to UNCW too. My sister did, and he's throwing a house party, and this friend shows up. And I think the cops came at one point. And then, so it cleared out a lot of people. And then, like, we're standing outside, and it's me, my sister's boyfriend, and the friend of the ex-boyfriend. And my sister's boy, like, it was awkward, right? Because, like, I wasn't going to say anything. This other dude wasn't saying anything. But my sister's boyfriend's like, yo, I think you owe Chris an apology. And I'm just like, what are you doing? I was just going to let this shit slide. And the guy's like, no, you're right. You're right. I'm sorry, man. And he, like, went to dab it up, and I'm like, oh. And he's like, no. Like, so, like, we hugged it out, and that was it.
I wouldn't have hugged him, yo.
No, I mean,
yeah,
whatever.
That's not happening. I'm like, all right, we're good.
That's water
Keep
under the
moving.
bridge at that point. But
and that's you got sucker.
I did.
Yo, I would have known that wasn't clean. I was like, nah, I'm good, yo. Like,
I'm too trusting when it comes to that stuff for sure. But anyways,
yeah.
Chris humiliates himself. Thanks for joining us. Chris's corner.
I'm sorry that happened to you, man. That sucks, man.
I mean, like my face was like he got me like right behind the ear or something like that too. So like
it's like a headache the next day. Yeah,
yeah, it was a little swollen, but it wasn't like I had a black eye or anything like that. It was fine. It was what it was.
Yeah, I don't have any stories like that.
No, I know. Like that's why I tell these stories.
I have something similar, but it didn't end that. Like somebody hit me with a crystal ashtray in a bar because I was with his sister. I wasn't dating her.
And then you roundhouse kicked him to the face.
No, actually, he knocked me out. He knocked me out, and but my boys held him for me to beat him up.
Wait, they held him for you until you came to?
Yeah, I was pissed. Yeah.
See, I need better friends like that.
Yeah, you need friends that have your back.
But that's the whole thing. Is like at my house party, this dude waited. Him and his friend, the ex-boyfriend, waited until I was coming down from my room and like cornered me.
Oh, word?
After everybody else had left, and we're like, I'm gonna kick your ass. And I was like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Like, this is my party. Like, I got this.
Oh,
is not
the
time to do that.
That's a bad play, homeboy.
And then my really large friend who played baseball heard what was going on and like came upstairs and literally was just like, dude, what are you doing? He was so drunk. He's like, what are you doing? What are you doing right now? I don't want to hit you, but I'll hit you if I have to. This is Chris's party. You don't mess with Chris when it's Chris's party.
That's crazy.
That's when they finally decided that they were just going to leave. And yeah. So.
Because you're smashing his girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, and I've got other stories but they're complicated. And
I mean, that was a fairly complicated story I told. That took me like 10 minutes to get through all that.
Yeah, mine are complicated. They get messy sometimes. But I'm a self-professed pacifist. I try not to hit people because it's bound to. And I'm a married older guy. I have no reason to be punching people in the mouth.
Oh, I mean, yeah, especially at this point in my life, like, no, there is no need for fighting. The closest I'll come to fighting is honking my horn at you when you do something dickish in the car.
I won't even do that. It's like, I hope you don't die.
Well, I had this asshole behind me the other morning in a fucking Mercedes, and he's like riding my ass while I'm doing the speed limit. And there's traffic all around us, so it's not like I can really go anywhere. And he finally gets like clearance to go to the right of me and like lays on the horn. And I was just like,
yeah.
Even that, I was like, that was dumb.
You're pushing the limit, man. These crazy people out here want to shoot everybody.
That's because I was like, I'm going to walk up to his car and say, hey, man.
That's a terrible idea. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I didn't do that.
I just, on a somber note, like the shooting in Raleigh, that was, look, I don't have any beef with Second Amendment people, but here's a question. Don't you think something should change? Because something's obviously broken. And things must have been really sour if like I would never kill one of my brothers. So there's a whole lot going on there. But I will say that you can take your interpretation of the Second Amendment, and at least you should get to a point by now and say something's off and want to do something different. But if that's your team, I get it. It ain't right, but I get it. So
this note is not nearly as somber, but it is somewhat related. Did you hear about the group in New Hanover County that auctioned off an AR-15 rifle in order to raise money for a school board candidate and a county commissioner?
Not that particular one, but I heard about one similar. Oh. Yeah.
I mean, like guns in schools, I think, we're kind of at a point where maybe we don't need to associate those two things with each other more than they already are. Maybe
I just saw this headline in the last day or so, but apparently in Texas, they are giving out DNA kits to parents so they can identify their children in case they're killed in a school shooting.
Was it Carrie High had somebody shoot a gun in a bathroom?
Yeah.
And the kids were like, we had no idea. We don't know if these are real or if it's just a drill because they don't tell us when it's a drill, if it's real or not, until it's over.
Yeah. Again, I'm not trying to start beef with Second Amendment people.
No, I'm not either.
I don't want your gun.
I'm with you in that, like, ultimately, don't you think that something needs to change here?
Yeah.
Like, you know, and I really just can't understand the idea that the solution is more guns.
I mean, if you bring out the heater just because you're upset, you're weak.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's
so. Yeah. Unless you've got, there's something.
If you show up to a house party just to beat up your ex-girlfriend's boyfriend, you're weak.
You're weak. You have problems.
Yeah. I hope you're listening.
Apparently, he's around your area. He went to school. You're gonna be calling me in a week. Yo, you never guess what happened to me. I was at the gas station. And dude's friend
rolled
sucker
up on
punched
me.
And I can't help you. I'm going to be like, yo, you asked for that, yo.
I'll be calling Joe. Joe, I need protection.
You got to get an entourage because you ran off with the mouth. So, and dude even gave you you guys cleaned it up, so you should be good.
No. I cleaned it up with the ex-boyfriend's friend.
You think he's still salty after years?
I don't think he cares.
I hope not.
Point. Yeah,
he might see you and get triggered.
He might.
Oh man, that's bad. Yeah.
Whatever. She ended up cheating on me too. So.
Yo, I'd be the first one to tell you how you meet somebody is how they'll leave you.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
So you meet somebody good, they're probably not going to leave you. You meet somebody on some dirt, they're going to leave you in some dirt. So that is facts. So, at any rate, we're glad you joined us. Chris, thank you for sharing that very personal and intimate story about how you got sucker punched.
Yeah. Right here behind the ear.
I did. That's why Joe said I don't want to be a player no more. So you mess around and fuck around and find out. Anyway,
I found out.
We're glad you joined us. It's great that you guys are listening. And please send us comments. It's not a bad thing. We're going to bring them up. We're going to read them. We're going to respond to most of them if they make sense. But I challenge you this: if you leave a comment, leave a complete thought.
Don't ask assumatory questions. I'm just making up words.
Yeah, that's not a word. But please make sure that if you leave a comment, even on a clip, check out the whole episode so you don't assume that your 12-year-old smarter than a grown-ass man. Context is everything. But leave us a comment. Shoot us an email at comments@chrisandandreshow.com. You can probably tag us, leave us some comments on YouTube because we're there. Obviously, if you're watching us, we are where you are listening. If you're listening to the audio version, we're on SoundCloud, Spotify.
I like the way you frame it. We are where you are listening. I mean, it'd be pretty impressive if you're listening to us and we're not there.
Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, all the podcast places, we're there. You can always send me comments at Chris@chrisandandreshow.com, or
you can send me comments at Chris@chrisandandreshow.com.
I'm also known as the guy in the middle. Next week,
I was like that's only when Joe shows up.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Otherwise, you're the guy on the right.
That guy just always, that comment just blew my mind. Yeah, I don't get why the guy in the middle. The guy in the middle.
Did you watch any of the links that he sent yet?
No, I've been busy.
Good. Yeah.
Are they garbage?
I don't know. I haven't watched them either.
Okay, I'm gonna watch them just so I want to make sure that I hit that guy back up.
We had like 4 different things in the last episode where we were like, next episode, that's what we're talking about right there. And this was not one of them. But that's okay because we do whatever we want. We call an audible.
Yeah, I'm calling now.
Omaha.
That's what we need to get at Denver right now.
Peyton Manning.
Yeah. So
I don't
anyway,
think he could throw the ball any better than Russ.
you might be right. But we're glad you joined us. As always, I'm Andre.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you next time. Thanks.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this episode. In case you ignored my previous instructions, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. Oh, and don't forget to tickle that little like button. And if you have something to say, you can drop it in the comment down below. See you on the next one.